Have you ever had a late night moment when a single thought suddenly froze your whole body, like a cold hand grabbing your heart? What if the person I love most disappears one day? How am I supposed to go on? Have you ever stared at the ceiling in the darkened thought, if I do not wake up tomorrow? What did this entire life actually mean? Did I really live? Or did I just keep myself busy until the end? Welcome back to the channel, my friend. I am really glad you are here. Today we are going to walk straight into a topic that most people spend their whole lives trying to avoid: impermanence, loss, death, and the fear that comes with them. The original article we are expanding from begins with exactly this kind of night: a woman lying in bed after cancer surgery, touching her hair in the dark, wondering if it will all fall out, wondering if the disease will return, wondering if her time is almost over. Fear wraps around her chest so tightly she can hardly breathe. She cannot sleep. She jumps at every new sensation. She is even afraid to go back for hospital checkups. If you have ever lived through something like that, a diagnosis, a phone call in the middle of the night, a sudden accident, a loved one's illness, you know that fear is not theoretical. It has weight. It has a taste. It has a smell. It leaks into everything. Sometimes it is sharp and loud. Sometimes it is a quiet background hum that never really stops. Most people try to deal with this fear in one of two ways. Some people cling more tightly. They try to control everything. They schedule every test, research every possible risk, plan every detail of their future, as if enough information and strategy could keep impermanence at bay. Other people go numb. They tell themselves, "I do not care. I do not want to think about it." And they wrap themselves in a kind of emotional ice. They avoid deep love, deep commitment, deep concern, because the thought of losing anything hurts too much. But neither of these strategies really works. Clinging exhausts you. Numbing starves you. You end up living like a prisoner. Either way, either a prisoner of panic or a prisoner of self minus protective coldness. Today, instead of running from impermanence or pretending it is not there, we are going to sit down with it like an honest guest. We will talk about how spiritual teachings, especially from Buddhist wisdom and Chinese life philosophy, invite us to turn fear into something else: an engine for awakening, a reminder to love more fully, a reason to practice, a compass for how to live. We will do this through stories and through for very practical inner shifts. These are not abstract theories. They are simple ways of looking and acting that you can actually try tonight, tomorrow, next week. They do not erase impermanence that is impossible, but they change how you stand inside it. Let us go back to that woman after surgery. Imagine her in the dark room. The hospital lights are off. The drip has stopped. She is lying in her bed at home now, recovering, looking at the ceiling. There is a faint street of twilight shining in through the curtains. Her hand reaches up automatically, untouches her hair. The doctor told her there is a chance the treatment could make it fall out. He told her there is a chance the cancer could return. He told her there is a chance of this and a chance of that. Her mind grabs every sentence and turns it into a monster. What if my hair falls out? What if it spreads? What if this pain means it is back? What if I do not live to see my child grow up? What if I never get to travel like I planned? What if? What if? What if? The more she thinks, the tighter her chest feels. Her breath becomes shallow. Sleep runs away. The night stretches long like a tunnel. She feels trapped in her own body, trapped in her own thoughts. Days turn into weeks. She goes back to work and tries to pretend she is fine, but fear follows her like a shadow. Any cough, any ache, any tiredness becomes a sign. She Googles symptoms late at night. She urgently asks doctors to interpret every number on every test result. She tries to control the uncontrollable, until one day, by accident, her phone shows her a simple sentence someone has shared. Life is impermanent, but we can still decide when impermanence comes. Will it only scare us, or will it also remind us of what matters most? The words are not fancy. They are not written by a famous teacher, but they land in her like a small stone in a still pond. That night, she cannot sleep again. She turns that sentence over and over in her mind, and for some reason, an old childhood memory rises up. She remembers going to a temple with her grandmother holding her small hand, walking slowly up the stone steps, bowing in front of the statue of a compassionate Bodhisattva, whispering, "When you are afraid, recite the Buddha's name. When you cry, talk to the Bodhisattva. Do not carry everything alone in your small chest." She had forgotten this for years, buried under school, work, relationships, bills. But now, in the middle of her fear, it comes back like a quiet voice from far away. The next day, without telling anyone, she goes to a nearby temple. No ceremony, no crowd, just an ordinary weekday morning. She walks into the hall, smelling incense and old wood. She sits down in front of a statue of the Bodhisattva of compassion, hands in her lap, and she does not know what to do except say what is true. "I am so afraid." She says it once, then again. "I am so afraid. I do not know how long I have. I do not know if the surgery really worked. I do not know if my body will betray me again. I am afraid for my child. I am afraid of leaving too soon. I am afraid of dying. I am even afraid of being afraid." She talks like this for a long time. She cries. Tears fall down her face, hot and steady. She is not performing. She is not bargaining. She is just telling the truth in front of something she feels is bigger than her fear. At some point, after she has cried out everything, a very small but clear thought arrives. I cannot control tomorrow. I cannot control whether the disease comes back. I cannot control how long I will live. But there is one thing I can choose. I can choose how I live each day that is still given to me. Do I want to spend my remaining days like a prisoner waiting anxiously for a sentence to be announced? Or do I want to live like someone who finally understands that every single day was never guaranteed in the first place? That thought does not erase her fear, but it shifts her center. On the bus home, she decides to make some small changes, not as a dramatic new identity, not as a social media announcement, but as quiet, personal vows. She decides not to give all her time to work anymore. She had always used business as a shield, telling herself she would spend more time with her daughter once things are more stable. Now she sees that later is a concept that can vanish overnight. She decides that every day, even if it is just 10 or 15 minutes, she will sit with her daughter and talk about real things, not just homework and chores, but feelings, funny memories, little stories from her own youth. She changes the way she eats, not from vanity or panic, but from gratitude. She tells herself, "Body, you have carried me for so many years without complaint. Every time I feed you now, I want to do it like an act of thanks, not just a habit of unconscious snacking." Before bed, she starts a tiny practice. She sits down, joins her palms, and recites a simple name of a Buddha or Bodhisattva. Then she says, "I do not know what tomorrow will bring. I do not even know if I will wake up, but I am willing to place my fear in front of you. Please teach me how to stand steady inside the unknown. Are her external circumstances completely different now? Not yet. But something inside is no longer exactly the same. Fear is still there, but it is not the only voice. Alongside it, another voice has appeared, the voice that says, since everything is impermanent, how do I want to live this hour? This conversation? This meal? This breath? This is the first quiet shift. Instead of letting fear drag you endlessly into imaginary futures, you turn it into a reminder to come back to what is right in front of you and ask, if I know nothing is fixed, how do I want to live today so that, if it turned out to be my last, I would not feel completely ashamed? You do not have to be sick or old to do this. You can be perfectly healthy right now, sitting on your couch, and still take 3 minutes to face the reality that everything from your body, to your job, to your relationships, to your current worries is changing. You do not do this to scare yourself. You do it to wake yourself. You can sit down somewhere quiet, close your eyes, and remind yourself, everything is in motion. My body is aging. Even if I do not see it day to day, my relationships are changing. My work is shifting. My thoughts and feelings are like clouds. Then you ask yourself a simple but sharp pair of questions. If tomorrow I woke up and everything was different, what would I most want to carry with me from today? And what regret would hurt me the most? If I realized I never took care of it, you do not have to analyze the answers for hours. Just let the first honest responses rise. Maybe you realize that what you most want is not another promotion or another new gadget, but time with your parents, or your partner, or your kids, or time for your practice, or the courage to start something meaningful. Maybe you realize that the regret would be never saying I love you to someone, never apologizing for something that still weighs on you, never using your gifts to help anyone. These insights are like compass needles. They show you what your heart truly values under all the noise. And once you see that, you can begin to adjust your life, even in small steps. You do not have to become a monk overnight. You do not have to quit your job tomorrow. You simply use the knowledge of impermanence not as a reason to panic, but as a reason to realign. The second shift is to do, each day, at least one small thing that you would not regret if you knew this was your last day. At first, that sentence might sound romantic, like something out of a movie, but in practice, it can be very ordinary and very human. Maybe for you, it means calling your parents and really listening. Instead of half listening while scrolling on your phone, asking them, how have you been really? What have you been thinking about lately? Maybe it means hugging your child and being fully there in that hug, not turning it into a quick, distracted squeeze while thinking about work emails. Maybe it means sending a message to someone who helped you years ago, a teacher, a friend, a colleague, and simply saying, I still remember what you did. Thank you. It mattered. Maybe it means sitting in silence for 10 minutes, reciting a short prayer or mantra or phrase that connects you to something beyond the noise, and letting your scattered mind settle a bit. It does not have to be a grand, heroic act. It just has to be something that your future self would look back on and say, even if the world had ended that night, I am glad I did that one thing. When you live this way, impermanence stops being just a threat and starts becoming your teacher. You know the friendship will not last forever, so you actually show up for it. You know your parents will not be here forever, so you stop postponing that trip or that conversation. You know your own energy and health have limits, so you use them on things that matter, not just on numbing entertainment. There is a story of a woman whose father was suddenly rushed into intensive care. The doctor looked at her in the hallway and said, with clinical calm, "You should be mentally prepared." She broke down. Her tears were not only for the possibility of losing her father. A big part of the pain came from her own regrets. For years, she had told herself, "I will thank him properly later. I will apologize later. I will ask him about his youth later. We have time." Standing in that hospital corridor, she realized that later is one of the most dangerous illusions. Her father did not die that day. He survived a little longer. She took that as a second chance. Afterwards, she changed the way she lived with the people around her. She started saying thank you more often, not just thinking it. She apologized when she was wrong. Instead of storing it away for some perfect future moment, she told her kids and her husband and her mother, "I love you," even when it felt awkward. She said later, "If impermanence is certain, at least I can decide to leave a little less regret in each relationship." That is the power of doing one thing you will not regret each day. Over time, these small actions accumulate into a life where you have fewer unsaid words, fewer unexpressed loves, fewer postponed acts of kindness. The third shift is about what you do in the very moment when fear rises like a wave. It might be triggered by a medical report, a phone call, a sudden pain, news of a disaster, or even just a random intrusive thought at 3 in the morning. Your heart speeds up, your stomach clenches, your mind says, "What if, what if, what if?" and pulls you toward worst-case scenarios. In those moments, your first impulse might be to escape, distract yourself, numb yourself, scroll, snack, drink, shop, do anything except feel. Or, on the other extreme, you might tighten and try to control even more. But there is another option. You can hand your fear into something larger than your own limited mind. This does not require belonging to a particular religion. It requires being willing to admit that you are not the only intelligence in the universe, that your ego is not the ultimate center of everything. When the wave rises, instead of drowning alone, you can connect it with a name, a symbol, a presence that represents compassion and wisdom. For you, the name of a Buddha, the name of a Bodhisattva, like the one who listens to the cries of the world. A simple phrase like "May I be held in wisdom," or even just "Help me see clearly." You say, either out loud or silently, "Right now I am really afraid. I do not know what will happen. My mind is spinning, but I am willing to place this fear in your light. Show me how to choose. Show me how to walk through this in a way that is aligned with wisdom, not just with panic." The situation outside does not change magically in that instant, but something important shifts inside. You are no longer a small, isolated creature trying to fight the dark alone. You have a sense of an inner ally, an invisible mountain behind you. This is not superstition. It is a psychological and spiritual repositioning. When fear is seen, named, and offered into a wider field of awareness, it loses some of its grip. You are less likely to make desperate, unwise decisions in that state. You are more likely to pause, breathe, and respond rather than react. You can think of it this way: if a child is terrified in the middle of a storm, and they cling to a calm, loving adult, the storm does not stop. The thunder still sounds, the lightning still flashes, but the child's experience changes. The presence of someone bigger, wiser, and more stable gives them a different way to feel the same event. When you learn to bring your fear to a larger presence, whether you name it Buddha, God, the Dharma, the Great Heart, or simply reality itself. You are doing the same thing for your own frightened inner child. You are saying, you do not have to handle this alone. The fourth shift is to actually look at death with your mind, instead of letting it lurk in the shadows as a vague, monstrous shape. Many people are terrified not of death itself, but of their imagination of death. Because they never examine it, it becomes distorted and huge. You can gently, over time, talk about death with someone you trust, or write about it in a notebook. You can ask yourself, what do I really think death is? What exactly am I most afraid of? The moment of dying, the pain, the unknown afterward, the separation from people I love, the feeling of not having lived meaningfully. You do not ask these questions to sink into despair, but to bring light to vague fear. When you write down your thoughts or speak them aloud, they stop being meaningless ghosts and become clear sentences. Clear sentences can be questioned, examined, softened. If you follow Buddhist insight, there is an additional perspective. Death is not the absolute end. It is more like changing vehicles on a long journey. The car you are sitting in right now is your current body and life situation. This car will eventually wear out. The passengers you are traveling with will change. Some will get off at earlier stops. Some will join later. But the stream of consciousness, the basic knowing that has been experiencing everything, does not simply vanish into nothing. It continues, shaped by the causes it has planted. The next car you ride and the conditions of your next existence is influenced heavily by how you drove this one, how you treated your fellow passengers, how you responded to difficulty, what habits you strengthened, what intentions you carried. When you really take this in, fear of death begins to transform. You may still feel sadness at the thought of leaving people you love. You may still feel nervous about the unknown. Those are natural. But you also feel a sense of practical responsibility. If my journey continues beyond this particular body, then how I live now matters even more. I want to plant good seeds. I want to practice compassion. I want to grow wisdom, so that whatever comes next is more luminous, not more confused. Instead of death being only a wall, it becomes a doorway. Instead of being only a thief, it becomes a strict but honest teacher that says, time is limited, use it well. Now, there is another pattern we need to talk about, because it hides inside many modern lives. Some people are so afraid of loss that they pretend not to care about anything deeply. They tell themselves, do not love too much. You will only get hurt. Do not be too close to your parents. One day you will have to say goodbye. Do not let your heart rest in your partner. One day they might leave. Do not care too much about the world. You cannot change it anyway. On the surface, this looks like non-mindness attachment. They say, I am just being realistic. Everything goes away, so I do not invest my emotions. But if you look closely, it is not wisdom speaking. It is fear. Underneath that cool surface, the heart is terrified. It is using numbness as armor. It says, if I do not care, it will not hurt when I lose. The cost of this strategy is huge. You might avoid the sharpest pain of loss, but you also avoid the warmth of real connection. Your life becomes flatter, colder, thinner. Spiritual teachings about impermanence are often misunderstood and used to justify this coldness. People think, since everything is empty and impermanent, nothing matters, so why care? Why love? But the traditional view of cause and condition, especially in Buddhist and Chinese wisdom, says the opposite. Every meeting is a temporary coming together of countless conditions. The fact that you and someone else appear in each other's lives at all, that you speak, share meals, fall in love, work together, raise a child, or even briefly cross paths is the result of an unbelievably complex weave of karma and circumstance. Impermanence does not say, "Do not love." Impermanence says, "Since this meeting will end one day, love well while you can. Since this gathering will scatter one day, be present while you are together. Since life will definitely end, live it with some meaning now." When you understand this, you do not run away from closeness. You know your parents will die, so you call them more, not less. You know your partner might leave, or you might leave first, so you choose honesty, unkindness now, instead of postponing it. You know your children will grow up and walk their own paths, so you savor their small hands, their silly jokes, their teenage storms, instead of letting screens and stress steal all your attention. You know the world is full of pain you cannot fix alone, but you turn toward it with whatever compassion and action you can manage, instead of hiding in indifference. There is another story of a parent whose father suddenly became critically ill in the hospital corridor. Hearing the doctor say, "You should be prepared," she broke down and realized that her deepest sorrow was not only the potential loss, but the years she had spent withholding words. After that, she decided that impermanence would no longer be an excuse to stay closed. It would be a reason to open. This is the kind of maturity that impermanence can push you toward. It breaks the rigid shell of pride and fear. It forces you to drop some of your masks and say the simple things that truly matter. Thank you. I am sorry. I love you. I was wrong. I am here. From the point of view of karmic cause and effect, all of these shifts are extremely important. Every time you use impermanence as an excuse to run away from love, you reinforce a habit of avoidance. That habit becomes part of your destiny. In future situations, you will find it even easier to shut down, even harder to connect. Every time you use impermanence as a reason to show up more fully, you create a different habit, the habit of responding to change with courage instead of withdrawal. That too becomes part of your destiny. So when you sit tonight and think about impermanence, you are not just playing with philosophy. You are bending the trajectory of your own heart. You are deciding what kind of person you will be, not only when things are easy, but when they end. Now let us gather these threads into something you can hold in your hand. Impermanence is certain. Fear is natural. You do not need to pretend you are not afraid. You do not need to perform being some fearless saint. But you have choices. You can choose to face the fact that everything is changing. Instead of living in denial, you can choose each day to do at least one thing that your future self would not regret. Even if this were your last day, you can choose to hand your fear to a wisdom larger than your own ego. Instead of carrying it alone, you can choose to talk and write honestly about death. Instead of letting unspoken fear control you from the shadows, you can choose to let the knowledge of impermanence make you warmer, not colder, more awake, not more numb. You do not have to accomplish all of this at once. Today, maybe your step is simply moving from "I cannot even think about it" to "I am willing to think for 1 minute." Tomorrow, maybe your step is moving from "every time I think about impermanence I terrorize myself" to "every time I think about it, I also use it as a reminder to practice." Later, maybe your step is moving from "impermanence knocks me flat" to "even when impermanence knocks me down, I know how to slowly stand up again with a bit more wisdom." Over time, these small steps add up. There may come a day when impermanence stands right in front of you, in the form of illness, loss, aging, or your own approaching death. You will still feel nervous. You will still feel sadness. You will still feel the ache of letting go, but you will not be completely destroyed. You will be able to say, with trembling but clear heart, "So this is the impermanence I have heard about all my life. It has truly arrived. Let me use this moment to practice everything I have tried to cultivate compassion, wisdom, and letting go. Let me die the way I tried to live, as honestly, unkindly as I can." That is not fantasy. It is the fruit of many days of small practice. Now I want to turn gently toward you. At what moment in your life did you most clearly feel life is truly impermanent? Was it a breakup, a death, an accident, a diagnosis, a sudden change in circumstances? After that moment, did anything in your daily life or your heart actually change? Even a little? Right now, what do you fear losing the most? A person? Your health? Your status? Your youth? Your security? If you accept, at least intellectually, that impermanence will come for that thing too, how do you want to treat it differently starting today? These are not questions to answer perfectly. They are questions to live with. If you feel moved to share some of your story in the comments, what shook you awake? What changed or did not change afterwards? What you fear losing now, your words might become a small lamp in someone else's dark corridor. Someone who is currently terrified, lying awake at 3 in the morning, might read your experience and feel less alone. If this long, quiet conversation has been helpful to you, if it has made the word impermanence feel a little less like a threat and a little more like a teacher, I invite you to support this channel in simple ways. You can subscribe so you do not miss future explorations of awakening, wisdom, cause and effect, compassion, practice, and destiny in everyday life. You can like this video so that it reaches others who are living under the weight of hidden fear. And if you feel called to walk more closely with this community, you can consider joining as a member, helping sustain the time and heart that go into these sharing. Most of all, whether or not you ever click another button, I hope you remember this when the next wave of fear rises. Being afraid of impermanence does not mean you are weak. It means you are human. The question is not whether impermanence will come, it will. The question is whether you will let it freeze you, or whether you will let it remind you, again and again, to live more awake, more loving, and more true to what really matters. You cannot stop the petals from falling, but you can learn to hold the flower more gently while it is in your hand. Thank you for spending this time here. May you find, in the midst of your fear, a little more clarity. In the midst of your uncertainty, a little more courage. And in the midst of impermanence, a heart that grows more compassionate with every passing day. There comes a time when you realize you want something that belongs just to you. Something that brings comfort and keeps you connected to your inner world. Wall-crafted bracelet does exactly that. Quietly, softly, and consistently. If you felt drawn to any bracelet in this video, you'll find the purchase link in the video description, and many more auctions in the channel's storefront. Because sometimes the smallest item can bring the biggest sense of peace.